So, OpenAI just dropped Atlas, and with it comes a question every dealer, marketer, and vendor should be asking. Have LLMs reached a point where they can think through a car deal the way a shopper does? And if so, what happens to search, websites, and the entire buying journey? In this episode, we're breaking down whether Atlas is the beginning of a new era in car buying or simply yet another illusion we need to see through. Welcome to another special episode of In Search of Insights. I'm your host, Dan Barker, and joining me today to talk AI is Wikimotive co-founder Zach Billings. Zach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Got some cool stuff brewing, and I'm excited to share it with viewers in the world.
Zach, big news in the world of AI anyway. I don't know that it's big news in the world of search yet, but ChatGPT's Atlas. What is your initial impression, if any?
My initial impression is that every time there's any news in AI land, it's big news to somebody or to everybody, and it usually has nothing to do with anything actually changing right now. That's my very pessimistic sounding, but really just it's driven from a place of people need to curtail the rate at which they assume things have like blown up their reality when it comes to AI. I think this is one of those things that'll be important in time, but it's a big old nothing burger for right now.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, it is, I think, in my mind anyway, groundbreaking. It is exciting, and it is also completely irrelevant to, I don't know, those that don't run anything less than the latest version of Mac OS, have an older Apple processor, or I don't know, own a PC, or trying to access it on a cell phone. But for those that don't know, the introduction of Atlas has been heavily restricted down from the outset to the most current Mac operating systems and M chipsets. But it is big news. But I think to your point, nothing has changed because ChatGPT and OpenAI have done the inevitable.
Yeah, the inevitable, and to your point, I mean, I'm an avid and active user of ChatGPT. Like from basically therapy to product discovery to spreadsheet formulas and everything in between. I'm constantly using ChatGPT, and getting Atlas was a difficulty because at first I went to download it and found out I wasn't on the latest OS. Thankfully, I have a machine that can run it with a late MacBook Pro and an M chip, and it was just an update, a software update away. But for most people, you go to download it and basically it just doesn't work. Or there's not even an option to, and you don't have it on cell phones where 75% of people are doing everything. So, yeah, I mean, it's like with most things, this topic or otherwise, you're just at the very, very beginning of the adoption curve, and it's not even as simple as like the consumer just needs to get on board. They just need to become aware of it. It's not just as simple as like you just need to get through the innovators to the early adopters and beyond. You're at a point where the technology just does not facilitate mass adoption right now. And that's okay. It doesn't need to. It just means that it's not massive news.
Yeah, it's not massive news to the masses, right? other than catchy headlines. I mean, it is. Frankly, maybe we should just title this episode with some big letters. The end is here. Atlas has arrived. Maybe we should do that. We should really do that. I think we get some clickbait in here with running around with the end is here, and you better panic.
To your point that it's not big news to the masses or for the masses, it is important. And I think for people in our space, right, thinking about optimization and the future of consumer habits and how you stay in front of people from a business and marketing standpoint, like, yes, it's relevant because just like with the last 3 years of optimizing around what is still like absolute infancy when it comes to user adoption for transactional commercial purposes of ChatGPT. We're still thinking about how are you going to optimize for this. It's still very much okay when the VDP on a dealer's website doesn't have vehicle schema and it's set up as instead product schema. Well, that's a fine distinction, and it's worked fine for SEO purposes because Google can parse the product schema being used for a vehicle just fine, but it should really be the vehicle schema. And when an LLM like ChatGPT is trying to look for that for a transactional search as tiny a percentage of the time as that is happening, and as poor as the technology is for that right now, it's still something very much on our radar, or needs to be on our radar to make sure that that's being future proofed again. So like Atlas is relevant news. It's just not going to change anyone's business reality for a while.
I think there's an interesting thread there, but before we go any further, I wonder, schema. Talk to me. Talk to me like this is my first day. What is schema and why does it matter?
Vehicle schema would be like make is a parameter, and you would put in Ford if it's a Ford, and model F-150, price 62,999, trim XLT, and so on and so forth. And there are lots of parameters, including VIN, etc. And this is it's an existing construct. It's like something that Google knows that it exists. It is a standard that exists throughout the web for products. So the product schema would apply to like a vehicle. It would also apply to a generator or a hairdryer, right? You just color purple, voltage 110.
In this case, pink. So, right, for those that may have seen it a while back, we did a piece on a pink wetsuit. Going through the entire process within ChatGPT to try and actually purchase a wetsuit for an upcoming event. We got all the way through, asked all the questions, it found all the right answers, but when it came to providing a link, there was no schema markup for the fact that the link that was provided was actually a women's wetsuit that was in bright pink that would have not fit and definitely not looked like it should have for my exact build characteristics, if you will. And all of it was because all of the information about that product was embedded in the URL string, and there was no schema markup for the LLM to actually reference, because that's how it's indexing data and returning results.
Well, and what's funny is even that is largely an assumption that people make about what the LLMs are doing. And like you can ask ChatGPT and it'll say one thing, but reality seems to be another in many cases. So like jury is out on what they even use to optimize for what they can find. And then, a wetsuit's one thing, right? At least with like traditional e-commerce products, there are lots of them in stock and they are fairly static over time. You switch that over to the auto industry where inventory is transient. And by the time it's picked up on a thing, it's often gone, and you end up landing on a redirect to the SRP or a dead link. So it's a clunky experience if it finds the right thing, and it often doesn't find the right thing because the schema was wrong. It didn't have anything to queue off of. And if you literally any of the website vendors in automotive right now, if you take a VDP, you put it in ChatGPT and you say, tell me what the schema markup is on this page, what it'll do is it will try to decode what the page is, and it'll often tell you what the schema should be. And it'll say, I didn't find any schema markup. And at first I was like hyper alarmed when I found this for one of our dealers, and I thought it was vendor specific. Come to find out, I can't find a website vendor that actually has schema properly applied for this new age. So what we're doing is we're going through to all of the website vendors for all of our dealers, and we're insisting that they make updates, some static pages, some platform wide. And, we have, 200-ish dealers. We don't have 18,000. And so you don't really have the weight. Nobody really individually has the weight to throw around to be able to get the website vendors on board with this. But what's going to end up happening sooner or later, somebody's going to get wise and is going to do the right thing, right? One of the website vendors is going to start applying things properly, and they're going to start getting an edge over time, slowly but surely, as the consumer tries to perform transactional searches on LLMs, and they'll get better results. Now, that being said, we are in the infancy of consumers adopting that. The technology is not very good at parsing these things. It can still be outdated links. Like there are all kinds of problems there still. So I don't think it's not very consequential right now, but the importance of being on top of it and being aware of what you could be doing to optimize better does matter. It matters for future proofing.
It does, and I think you brought up an interesting point. Is before we can even expect the consumers to change their habits in a rapidly evolving marketplace, there has to be a marketplace, and the marketplace is dependent upon is really fully dependent upon the technology stack, and they don't even know what to do. I mean, you think about how long an automotive website provider has sat on the technology stack at hand and everything that interfaces with that. It's in the span of 5, 10, 15 years or longer in some places. To expect that to rapidly evolve and change overnight, to be able to even accommodate a consumer habit that has yet to change, because where it's even supposed to and how it's supposed to change couldn't even be defined 6, 12, 18 months ago. It's pretty unrealistic that first and foremost, the technology stack has to change, and there has to be a need to, with the consumers, that what reason do they have to change their habits at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, recently we saw announcements that, for instance, Walmart's going to get in bed with OpenAI, right? And sooner or later, we're going to start to see checkout options where you can check out with Walmart, right within ChatGPT. And DoorDash also announced that. Yet neither of those integrations is actually ready yet. So like it's announced, but they're not there yet. And I think we can all agree that like ChatGPT, if they could have those ready right this second, they would, because why wouldn't you? And so if you extend this out and you think about just like what is the pattern of what's happening right now, it's taking time for this company that has just sort of sprung into existence and is like the hot new thing, but is also like they have to figure it out. And it is not something that just changes instantaneously. Despite all of their resources, they can only move so quickly. And they have to triage, right? As a business, they're going to go after where the money is, where the opportunity is. So Walmart, I looked it up as we've been talking on ChatGPT, mind you. So Walmart, $840 billion market cap, right? So they're almost $1 trillion company. And so it makes sense, right? That you would go to one of the biggest retailers and you would prioritize them for an integration. DoorDash, $110 billion market capitalization. Okay. Cars.com, for, if we think about this from the auto retail standpoint. So the logical conclusion here is that it's a matter of time until one of the third parties ends up with an integration like what Walmart or DoorDash has announced with ChatGPT. But OpenAI's motivation to integrate a third-party lead aggregator or inventory aggregator and have a connection into ChatGPT so you can do either advertising or have a direct feed to inventory. Their motivation is only as big as the economic value of that thing. So Walmart, almost $1 trillion market cap. DoorDash, over $100 billion market cap. Cars.com, market cap of about $750 million. So less than 1% of DoorDash, which is less than 1% of Walmart. Yeah. So where is Cars.com in OpenAI's priority list of integrations, even if that conversation was happening behind the scenes and we don't know that it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and I to your point, and I wrote actually an article for Auto Success for the month of November, really kind of pointing at this exact point. But before we get into any of that, like it makes sense for Walmart to be first or any one of these other mega companies like that, because there's one thing when you're asking the consumer to change a habit on a $30 toaster, right? At most, you're going to lose $30 here. So if you're thinking about how to take users, shoppers at scale and convert them into using your platform, well, what are they most likely to gamble that first transaction on? A $11.99 pair of socks, or a $62,000 Ford F-150. I think it's the pair of socks. Like I think it's the toaster. So while I completely agree, it is an integration from cars or wherever is absolutely inevitable and will change the landscape. You have to have a consumer that is willing to even consider a purchase like that, or even a purchase path. And I know one of the things that you've been working a lot on is laying out an example of how different a user journey or a potential shopper journey is through an LLM versus what everybody has been doing since the dawn of the internet and commerce on the internet with search engines. It's vastly different. And I know you spent a lot of time on this, and I know we don't want to necessarily give too much away as some of this is going to be released at MRC. Maybe you'd like to get into a little bit of how different the journey is to even get to a point where you're ready to transact in an LLM.
So once upon a time, it was as simple as when you were doing research, you would type into Google new truck models under 60K. And what you'd do is you'd end up finding like an article from Motor Trend, and you'd read about, their full layout of all the trucks, and you'd have to read through it and kind of digest all of that information. And then you'd have to do some more research and read through another article to figure out refining your search down. Now people can and will use an LLM for this. So a typical, pathway from starting with discovery is I want new truck models under 60K because my budget is somewhere around 60K and I want a new truck. And so what does it spit out? It would spit out all of the truck models, right? Because they all have a trim that's under 60K. So then you say, hey, I want this to be made in America. All right. F-150, Ram 1500, and Tundra. Those are your options. And so you've got those three as your options. And now you're like, all right, I do a lot of highway driving for my job right now. And I assume it's available to have hands-free driving. I keep hearing about this. So which ones have hands-free driving? Turns out it's just the F-150 with Blue Cruise. So now you've gone through your discovery and you've narrowed down to what model might I be interested in that fits my need. I want a new truck under $60,000 made in the United States that has hands-free cruise. Great. Now we're into research. And you continue this pathway. It's just a continuum. You continue to ask more and more prompts. According to a study done by SEMrush, the average prompt string is 8 different prompts. Okay, so this is essentially a 6-prompt example, and maybe 7 if you try to attempt the transactional piece. So this is in line with what a typical prompt string would look like before you get into trying to find the product. And so you do this and you say, all right, which F-150 levels, trim levels have Blue Cruise? Everything from XLT and up would be the answer. And I did this example, obviously, when I was putting together this, and it very much flows exactly like this. It's very sensible. It's a great way to use an LLM because they can distill this information so fast rather than you having to go read article on article on article on article. And there's never a reason that you need to click any of the cited links that it provides you. Because why would you? You don't need to go read the article when it's going to give you the distillation. So you're doing your research, you find out XLT or better. And so you ask it, what's the price of an XLT with Blue Cruise? And it gives you that. And you ask it, what about trim differences? And it gives you those options. What about the Lariat? So you've kind of narrowed down, all right, well, for 62 grand, I can get a Lariat with Blue Cruise. Now I want to go find one, right? I'm convinced that's what I want to buy. Now I go find one. So we're into the transactional part of the consumer journey at that point. There's a bunch of different ways that the consumer can now go. And all of the current research suggests that the vast majority of people, by habit, and just by what they're used to will now switch to traditional search. They actually choose, in the vast majority of cases, to just go to Google and search
Let
for
me
their product.
So let me stop you there. What you're saying, effectively, what you're saying is, shown in the slide is steps 1 through 6 are all done in. Let's just use ChatGPT as that is the predominant LM. Yep, but what you're saying is effectively, once we get the answer of the thing I want, there is the consumer path to actually transact is still deferring back over to Google as the search engine of choice here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stats are in the order of 90-ish% of the time people are just automatically going to a search engine because it's already the ingrained way of doing things. And then most people end up there eventually. 99% is what it is of people end up there to ultimately engage in the pathway that leads them to the vehicle and the conversion, not the very small number of people who potentially push their way through, right? It's the bleeding edge innovators on the adoption curve who will go through the difficult task. You did it with the wetsuit, right? You are generally a person that's a bleeding edge innovator in spirit, and also you wanted to figure out how possible is this, and it's freaking difficult to get to I'm at the product and I can now transact having found it via ChatGPT. If you push your way through, you can eventually get to a dealership website and convert on a VDP having done that. But it's so darn difficult that everyone virtually will abandon that in frustration. Because what happens is if you try and run this search and you try and find inventory via ChatGPT, the thought process it takes will take anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes, which is wild. I suggest people try that. And even when you eventually find some links and it says, okay, here's 3 F-150 Lariats with blue cruise under 60 grand or near 60 grand near you, those links are usually outdated or it's not what it said it was. It's just an SRP. So you get frustrated, you go back to Google, and that's where most people just go anyway. And they either look for a Ford dealer and then they explore inventory for themselves, or they do the search F-150 Lariat for sale and they're looking for the organic or paid results, right? So the pathway virtually always leads back to traditional search at this point because that's the modality that works and is also aligned with existing consumer habits. The other thing that I'm going to be showing at MRC is the data backs this up in spades. So I won't spoil it for everybody right here and now, but the slides further down the presentation are a study we did across 150 of our dealers looking at how much traffic and how many conversions are being driven from LLMs versus Bing versus Google, comparing them across that range. And the result will shock people. And it proves definitively that the pathway that is ultimately leading to business, to transactional opportunity, commercial opportunity for dealers, leads in your CRM is virtually always back to paid or organic search, even if most of the journeys are starting to begin, or statistically 21% of the journeys are now starting to begin in ChatGPT.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Super informative, and I think it's one of the things that I've noticed is it's not the conversation that's going on because it's either the extremes is what it seems to be in my mind and in my view is the conversations are either the clickbait, the world is ending because it's here, or pay no attention and you don't have to do anything because you're going to be just fine. And I think neither one of those are true. But there is absolutely no reason to be running around as if somehow a comet is about to smash into the Earth's surface here in the sense that the customer journey has yet to change. Other than the customer journey has yet to change as it relates to transacting, but research is being done much differently than it ever has been. I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The consumer patterns are changing dramatically. Technology is changing dramatically, but you have, frankly, irresponsible actors across many industries. But this is definitely happening in automotive, and I want to call out the OEMs for repeating bad information without paying attention to what you're repeating or testing it. And it comes from an innocent enough place, right? You've got multiple OEMs are doing this right now, and I'm hearing dealers come back from OEM meetings and showing me the slide deck where they're putting Google AIO, AI overview up on a pedestal, like you have to be showing up here or you're going out of business. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Um, the stats, I mean, the studies are readily available. Do a little bit of cursory research, and it's very easy to find the studies and information from Google's own mouth on this topic. The reality is that only 11% of commercial, aka transactional search queries on Google produce an AIO, an AI overview result of any kind. But the further nuance, so it's only 11%, which is not very much, but the further nuance that people are also glossing over is that if you look at where that AIO shows up, usually shows up below paid and below the first handful of organic results for commercial intent searches, because Google figured out very quickly that when it shows up, it's cannibalizing their own paid results and it's cannibalizing organic in a way that impacts trust and therefore market share. So they had to move it down to make sure that it's out of the way. And that means it's not really impacting business. Furthermore, and this is really the thing that people need to be cluing in on, 11% of commercial intent keywords will produce an AIO. But the keywords that produce the keywords that produce an AIO are virtually always long tail keywords, meaning many words in them, so they're not searched very often, or generally low search volume keywords. I was in a little debate on LinkedIn the other day with somebody who pointed out to me, or tried to point out to me, in one of my LinkedIn posts that, well, I do lots of keyword searches and see an AIO. And I was like, yes, you do. And he gave the example, best blank dealer. So like best Ford dealer produces an AIO sometimes. That's true. And that is a transactional or commercial search. In the Dallas-Fort Worth market, one of the biggest metroplexes in the country, best Ford dealer is searched 10 times per month.
Yeah.
Ford dealers is searched 13,000 times per month and does not produce an AIO. So what people are missing when they paint with this really broad brush and the OEM repeats this FOMO creating advice that you need to be focusing on this, it's being missed that this is not where the opportunity is. And it's unfortunately repeating bad information because they're missing the nuances. And I don't think it's done with ill intent. It's unfortunately being done through a little bit of ignorance. And I want people to get wise and look for some studies before they repeat this stuff.
Well, I think there's unfortunately the idea, not just in automotive, but everywhere, that newer must always be better. And that can be damaging. And I think, frankly, you've even seen that with Google themselves, right? The user journey with inside automotive, outside automotive, doesn't matter, with AIO in the beginning, and even now, is not always awesome. It has produced some absolutely trash results. And when you're looking to introduce a new feature to masses, blatantly wrong or blatantly just dumb results ruin the reputation and the image of the thing that you're trying to ask a consumer base to adopt and move towards. So I think really there's been such a rush to whatever is the newest and to get to that the fastest and hold it up the highest and scream the loudest about it, that I think there's been some lack of responsibility on all parties of saying, is this actually anything that's even usable at this point?
In my research for the presentation I'm doing at MRC on a lot of studies around all of this, one of them, and I didn't use it in the presentation, but it's interesting nonetheless, is 19%. So maybe I'll use the search stat first. 42% of people trust organic search results. And now that comes from like a gradient. So that would be fully trust. And then you've got, partially trust and trust but verify kind of results. So 42% trust what they find in organic results. Only 19% feel the same way about AI results.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you absolutely have a trust issue right now, and it's going to take some time to overcome that. And it may never fully work out that it's overcome, because the reality is AI is curating a cross section of information, and you don't always have a clear picture of where that came from, particularly with LLMs. So how
Yeah.
do you know if it's good info or not? Whereas when you go straight to the source, at least there's a better chance of understanding, was that what I was looking for?
Yeah. I think there's certainly going to be a lot more on this topic. I think it is going to continue. The the technology is going to continue to develop quickly, and the adoption will evolve as it often does in new and novel areas like this, and that is typically over a much longer period of time. I think is a pretty safe way to say some of this. All right. Well, I think that's probably more than enough for this episode, and I know we're going to continue this conversation really from here on out. This is a series we'd like to continue, where we just dive into the latest developments and where the space is going. So I think that's enough for this episode. Thanks, Zach, for hanging out and talking AI on In Search Of.
Till next time.
Till next time.